Somewhere in America right now, a woman is signing the papers on a house she and her husband lived in for 31 years. It's paid off. They don't owe anybody a dollar. 3 months from now, a tax bill is going to arrive for money she is completely certain is already hers. She won't have done anything wrong. She won't have been careless. She'll have simply believed the thing that almost every homeowner believes, and that belief is going to cost her roughly $100,000. There are 4 rules that decide whether a sale like that costs nothing or costs a fortune. 4. Most people have never heard the name of a single one of them. The 4th is the one that moves the most money, but it won't make sense yet. So let's start where she should have started. Here's the belief. See if it sounds familiar. You bought the house decades ago for a fraction of what it's worth today. It's paid off, so every dollar of the sale is yours, the reward for a lifetime of payments. That feels like plain common sense. It's also completely wrong, because the government does not tax the price you sell it for. It taxes the gain. The gain is the sale price minus your basis. And your basis isn't just what you paid. It's what you paid plus every real improvement made to that house over the entire time you owned it. A new roof, a remodeled kitchen, a room addition, a furnace, new windows, all of it stacks on top of the basis. And that matters enormously. Higher basis, smaller gain. Smaller gain, smaller taxes. Every documented improvement is money back in a homeowner's pocket years later. So let's build one example and carry it all the way through this video. Call them Margaret and Tom. They bought in the late 80s for $60,000. Over 30 years, they put another $40,000 into the place. Basis, $100,000. They sell for $600,000. The gain isn't $600. It's $600 minus $100. $500,000 of gain. One more piece almost nobody counts. Selling costs, agent commission, title fees, closing costs come off the top too. On a $600,000 sale, that's often $35,000 or $40,000 that was never supposed to be taxed in the first place. And one warning, because this trips people constantly. Improvements count. Repairs don't. Replacing a roof is an improvement. Patching a roof is a repair. Remodeling a bathroom counts. Repainting it doesn't. Which gives you the first thing you can act on today. And it costs nothing. Go find the receipts. Every permit, every contractor invoice, every bank statement showing a check written to a roofer. Old credit card records can rebuild a lot of what's been lost. That shoebox in the garage isn't clutter. It's cash. If that just changed how you think about your own house, do me one quick favor. Hit like, hit subscribe, and drop a comment with how long you've owned your home. I read them, and honestly, the comments on these videos surface things I didn't know. That's it. Back to it. Now, the law isn't cruel here. There is a genuinely generous rule that protects most people. It's called the home sale exclusion. Section 121 if you want to look it up. A single person keeps up to $250,000 of gain, completely tax-free. A married couple filing jointly keeps up to $500,000. You generally need to have owned the home and lived in it as your main home for 2 of the last 5 years. Back to Margaret and Tom. $500,000 of gain. $500,000 exclusion. That whole thing is covered. They owe nothing. Which is exactly why most people never think about this. The rule quietly protects them and they never learn its name. But here's where it gets interesting. Those numbers were set in 1997. and they have never been adjusted for inflation. Not once, not $1. The standard deduction goes up every year. The brackets go up every year. The estate exemption goes up every year. This one just sits there frozen since 1997, when the median American home cost was about $129,000. Adjusted for inflation, that exclusion would be roughly $500,000 for a single person and $1 million for a couple today. It isn't. It's the same number your parents had. So how many people does that leave out? The National Association of Realtors ran it. Right now, about 29 million American homeowners, roughly 1 in 3, already have enough gain to blow past the $250,000 line if they sold today. 8 million are past 500,000. By 2035, they project nearly 70% will be over that first line. Housing economists even have a name for what this does: the stay put penalty. People who should downsize don't, because moving now has a price tag attached. That's not a loophole for rich people. That's a retired school teacher who bought a normal house in 1994 and had the audacity not to move. Now change one thing. 1. Tom passes away, and Margaret sells that same house as a single person. The exclusion is no longer $500,000. It's $250,000, and that same $500,000 of gain now has $250,000 sitting completely exposed. Half the protection is simply gone. At the exact moment a grieving person can least handle a financial surprise. But here's where the law offers one narrow mercy, and this is the part that almost nobody learns in time. It's tucked into the code at section 121B4. A surviving spouse keeps the full $500,000 exclusion, but only if the home is sold within 2 years of the date of death. 2 years from the date on the death certificate, not 2 tax years, not roughly 2 years. The sale has to close inside that window. There's a second condition that catches people. The seller must be unmarried on the date of sale, remarry before selling, and that special provision is off the table. And one point of confusion worth clearing up, because nearly everyone tangles these together. In the year a spouse dies, the survivor can still file a joint tax return. That's real and it's valuable, but it's a completely separate rule. Filing jointly for that final year does not extend the 2-year home sale window. And the 2-year window doesn't hand you joint tax brackets. 2 different clocks, 2 different rules. Sell inside the window, you keep the full amount. Miss it, and you drop to $250. And nobody calls to remind you. There's no letter. Somebody is still learning how to sleep in a house alone, and a clock they've never heard of is already running. This isn't about rushing a grieving person to a closing table. It's about knowing the line exists, so the choice belongs to the person and not to a calendar they didn't know about. Alright, the 4th rule. Of everything in this video, this is the one that moves the most money. It's called the step up in basis. When a spouse dies, their share of the home gets its value reset, for tax purposes, to what the home was worth on the day they died, not what the couple paid for it in 1998. And you already know what a higher basis does. Higher basis, smaller gain. Smaller gain, smaller tax. Watch what it does to Margaret's numbers. Say the house was worth $500,000 on the day Tom passed. His half resets to $250,000. Her half keeps its old cost, $50,000. Her new basis isn't $100,000 anymore. It's $300,000. So she sells for $600,000, and her gain isn't 500,000. It's 300,000. With her single exclusion of 250, only about 50,000 is exposed instead of 250. That one rule just protected $200,000 automatically without her filing out a single form. And in some states, it's dramatically stronger. In the 9 community property states, Arizona, California, Idaho, Louisiana, Nevada, New Mexico, Texas, Washington, and Wisconsin, the entire home resets on the day one spouse dies. Not half, all of it. In those states, that same sale might produce almost no taxable gain at all. 0. But here's the part that costs people real money. In those states, the wording on the deed decides whether you get it. If the house is titled as plain joint tenancy instead of community property, you only get the half step up. Same house, same state, same marriage, different words on a piece of paper, and $200,000 of difference. If you live in one of those 9 states, go look at your deed today. That's a 20-minute call to an estate attorney that can be worth more than a year of income. And one more piece, because the step up only helps if you can prove it. You need documentation of what the home was worth on the date of death. Get a formal appraisal. A qualified appraiser can do a retroactive date of death appraisal years later, but it gets harder and weaker with time. A few $100s now defends a 6-figure number later. Most people never hear the phrase step up in basis until after they needed it. Now here's the piece even the good articles leave out. This is the one that shows up in year 2, long after everyone stopped paying attention. The home sale isn't the only thing that changes when somebody becomes a survivor. Financial planners have a name for the whole stack. They call it the widow's penalty. Starting the year after a spouse dies, the survivor's files as a single person. And the single brackets aren't a little narrower. They're roughly half. In 2026, a married couple over 65 gets a standard deduction around $35,000. A single person over 65 gets about 18. Married filers don't hit the 22% bracket until roughly $105,000 of taxable income. A single filer hits it around 50. Same house, same grocery bill, less income, higher rate. And that's how it compounds with the home sale, the connection almost nobody makes. That taxable gain doesn't sit quietly in a corner. It lands on the return and shoves income way up for 1 year, which drags 2 more things along with it. 1. The net investment income tax, an extra 3.8% on top of the capital gains rate once income crosses $200,000 for a single filer, and you get one guess whether that threshold is indexed for inflation. It isn't. Frozen since 2013. 2. And this one genuinely blindsides people. Medicare. Medicare premiums are set by looking at a tax return from 2 years ago. So the house sells this year, the gains spike the income, and 2 years later, a letter arrives raising Medicare premiums for a year in which the person earned almost nothing. Here's the fix, and it's the single most useful form in this entire video. If someone is paying the inflated Medicare premiums based on a return from when their spouse was still alive, the death of a spouse counts as a life-changing event. They file Form SSA 44 and ask Social Security to recalculate using current income instead. One form. Most people never hear about it. If you know a recent widow or widower paying high Medicare premiums, hand them that number, SSA 44. So here's the short version. The questions to ask while there's still time to ask them. 1. Find the improvement records, every roof, every remodel, every window, and keep them from here forward. 2. Know your exclusion and know that a spouse's death starts a 2-year clock on the larger one. 3. Ask specifically how the step-up in basis applies to this home in this state with the deed as it's currently written. 4. Talk to a qualified tax professional before the sale, never after. Everything in this video is far easier to plan for than to prepare once the closing is done and the tax is already owed. 1 hour with the right person before anyone signs can be worth more than most households save in a year. 2 quick fairness notes. If life forces an early sale, a serious health change, a job move, certain unforeseen circumstances, the law may still allow a partial exclusion instead of nothing. The death of a spouse is itself on the IRS list of safe harbor circumstances. Imperfect timing doesn't automatically mean losing everything. Ask, and you may have seen headlines about Congress raising or eliminating this tax. There are real bills. As of right now, none of them have passed. The rules described here are rules that apply to a sale closing today. Watch it, don't plan around it. One last thing, because none of this should scare anyone off a good decision. Selling a long-held home is very often exactly the right move to do. To free up money that was earned. To live somewhere easier to care for. To be closer to the people you love. None of that is a mistake. It only turns painful when the tax arrives as a surprise, because a surprise leaves no room to plan. So think of one person sitting today in a house they've owned for decades, believing exactly what Margaret believed. A parent, a neighbor, a friend who lost a spouse. Send them this. And if you're now wondering what else changes when a spouse dies, the beneficiary forms, the Social Security decision most survivors get wrong in the first 90 days, that's the video to watch next. It's right here. Quick note, this is general education, not personal tax or legal advice. These rules are genuinely complicated and depend on your state and situation. Confirm your own numbers with a qualified professional before you sell. The goal here was simple, to make sure you know which questions to ask while you still have time to ask them.